April 13th, 2022 meeting of the Trails, Sidewalks, and Bikeways Committee. To conduct this meeting wholly electronically and to effectuate both the emergency procedures authorized by FOIA and the emergency ordinance, this committee needs to make certain findings and determinations for the record. It is a bit cumbersome, so I ask you in advance for your patience. First, because each member of the committee is participating in the meeting from a separate location, we must verify that a quorum of members is participating and that each member's voice is clear, audible, and at an appropriate volume for all of the other members. Accordingly, I'm going to conduct a roll call and ask each committee member participating in the meeting to state your name and the location from which you are participating. I ask that each of you pay close attention to ensure that you can hear each of your colleagues. Following this roll call, we will vote to establish that every member can hear every other member. Roll call follows. I'm the representative at large and chair of the committee, Ken Comer, calling from Springfield. Braddock District, Mr. Cosgriff.
This is Bob Cosgriff calling from my home in Braddock District.
You hear you, Bob. Hunter Mill District, Mr. Rowe. No response. Mount Vernon District, Mr. Klein.
Yeah, this is Jim Klein calling from my home in Holland Hills.
We hear you, Jim. Drainsville District, Ms. Lawrence. No response. The Providence District is vacant unless somebody wants to tell us that they're here from the Providence District. The Mason District, Mr. Albright.
James Albright, beautiful Mason District.
Thank you, Jim. We hear you. Springfield District, Mr. Liebert.
Carl Liebert here, representing Springfield.
Thank you, Carl. Lee District, Ms. Bartlin.
This is Erin Bartlin calling from my home in Lee District.
Thank you, Erin. Sully District, Ms. Ampa. No response. Clifton Horse Society, Ms. McDaniel.
Katie McDaniel for Clifton Horse Society calling from Reston.
Thanks, Katie. We're here. Fab, Mr. Newman. No response. Nobody from the Disabilities Board is here, correct? Fairfax County Federation of Citizens Associations, Mr. Tipton. No response. Fairfax County Park Authority, Ms. Ionetta.
This is Beth Ionetta calling from my home in City of Fairfax.
Thank you, Beth. Hear you. Northern Virginia Builders Industry Association, Ms. Portilla. No response. Northern Virginia Regional Park Authority, Mr. Depew, sorry. No response. Washington Area Bicycle Association, Mr. Albers.
Howard Albers from my home in Fairfax, Virginia.
Thank you, Howard. We'll hear you. I move that each member's voice may be adequately heard by each other member of the committee. It is our practice to approve this and all subsequent motions by acclamation. So I will ask now if there are any objections or nay votes. Hearing none, the motion carries. Second, having established each member's voice may be heard by every other member, we must next establish the nature of the emergency that compels these emergency procedures, the fact that we are meeting electronically, what type of electronic communication is being used, and how we have arranged for public access to this meeting. Therefore, I move that a state of emergency caused by the COVID-19 pandemic makes it unsafe for this committee to physically assemble and unsafe for the public to physically attend any such meeting, and that as such, FOIA's usual procedures, which require the physical assembly of this committee and the physical presence of the public, cannot be implemented safely or practically. I further move that the committee may conduct this meeting electronically through the Microsoft Teams platform. The format will also provide a dedicated phone line. The public may access this meeting by going to www.fairfaxcounty.gov/ transportation/trails and using the Microsoft Teams link at that website, or by calling 571-429-5982 and using the access code 976-701-641#. It is so moved. I again asked if there are any objections or nay votes. Hearing none, the motion carries. Finally, it is next required to establish that all of the matters addressed in today's agenda address the emergency itself, are necessary for the continuity of Fairfax County government, and or are statutorily required for or necessary to continue operations and the discharge of this committee's lawful purposes, duties, and responsibilities. It is so moved. I will again ask if there are any objections or nay votes. Hearing none, the motion carries. Okay, so with that done, the next thing I want to do is to be sure that we've recorded everybody who is here. So let's find out who from staff is here.
This is David Loss from FCDOT.
Tilt my camera so you can see me. Chris Wells from Fairfax County Department of Transportation.
And Lauren Delmar, also with the Fairfax County Department of Transportation.
And that's it for staff, right? Okay, and next I'd like to find out if any members of the public have chosen to attend the meeting tonight. Okay, so is there anybody here whose name I have not called?
Lydia Lawrence, Drainsville District Rep.
Ah, hi Lydia.
Hi.
We hear you. Good. And you can hear us, right, Lydia?
Yes.
Okay, that means we can move to the first order of the agenda, which is the review and approval of March 2022 minutes. A read ahead for these minutes have been provided. Is there any discussion of the March 2022 minutes?
I haven't gotten any responses on corrections, so if anyone has anything, feel free to let us know.
Well, certainly if anybody notices anything wrong after we've approved the minutes, we could always issue a correction. So, okay, hearing nothing, a motion is in order to accept the March 2022 minutes.
Second it. Or do you need me to make the motion?
Well, somebody has to move it.
Oh, I thought you were. I'll make a motion. We approve the March 2022 minutes.
Chair can't make a motion, so it has to be somebody else.
Seconded.
I know, I just made a bunch of motions. But officially, chair can't make a motion. So, got it. Okay. I will do this by acclamation again. Is there anybody opposed or nay votes to accepting the March 2022 minutes? Hearing nothing, the March 2022 minutes are approved. Next, Safe Streets for All by Lauren. The floor is yours.
Hello, thank you. Okay, I'm going to try my share tray. I've been having issues with Teams today, so let's see. Can you all see my presentation?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, great. Okay, so thank you for having me here today. I'm here to provide an update on the Safe Streets for All program, which is not quite a program yet, but hopefully soon to be. And the sort of history and then where we're at right now and what our next steps are. So I'll just jump right in. So this is our little timeline so far. We started off this effort because in January of 2020, the board passed a motion on pedestrian safety. And so we originally had a plan to do a Safe Streets for All, or, sort of a, this is sort of our take on a Vision Zero program. And we had a systemic safety program, and we had an intention to do that as part of the active Fairfax transportation plan. But originally we had scoped that in phase 2 of the plan. And following that board motion, we decided to move that forward into phase 1 to respond to the board's urgency to address safety, especially for the most vulnerable roadway users. So then during 2020 and 2021, we worked on that active Fairfax transportation plan phase 1 and the development of the draft Safe Streets for All program recommendations. And then we initially presented those program recommendations to the board and in June of 2021, and we did public outreach following that. And then just a month ago, the past 2 months, we've been to subsequent board transportation committee meetings to share the outreach summary, the updated recommendations, and the proposed next steps for the program. So today I will go over a little bit of those next steps, but first the framework. And I believe we discussed this at a previous meeting, but there were over 60 recommendations drafted, and they fell into the following 6 subject areas. They were policy and planning, street design and traffic engineering, equity and social justice, education and traffic safety culture, funding and implementation, and monitoring and evaluation. And so the next steps that we're going to propose, and I have these a little bit out of order, I'm sorry about that, but the next steps that we wanted to propose were that we would have board action in May 2022. So we're going to bring a item to the board for endorsement of the Safe Streets for All program as a whole, and for the sort of ability to pursue the recommendations, not necessarily supporting individual recommendations or policies that are in the draft document. And then then from there, we're going to, moving down from the board action, here we're going to continue to do our ongoing and immediate strategies. So I'll outline today what our ongoing strategies are, and then our immediate strategies that we're planning to tackle with existing resources. So that means existing staff, existing funding. And then simultaneously, while we're doing that, we're also going from over to the right side of the screen, request a staff position and program funding in fiscal year 2024. Then going down from there, that will allow us to attack some of the more time or funding intensive key strategies that are outlined in the recommendations. And I'll go over what those priorities will be for the program manager that we have outlined and presented to the board.
Hey, Lauren?
Yes.
Can I interrupt? Was that you talking a county staff position or a school department staff?
County staff position.
Okay.
Yeah, so we would be looking for a Safe Streets for All program manager position. Okay. So to talk about a little bit about the key strategies that we have ongoing today. Today we are consistently applying a design to reduce conflicts for all users and to prioritize the safety of active transportation users. And this is ongoing through all of our capital projects work, and then programs like repaving. So this image shows the outcome of a repaving project. In all of these strategies, I highlight where the recommendation came from. So this is a design recommendation. Some of them target more than one of our subject areas. So I just want to highlight that this one's design, but some of them will they pull from recommendations in more than one of those areas. So it'll show that too. We currently implement planned active transportation facilities and streetscaping requirements, both through development and also on capital projects. We developed and implemented a communication strategy during the outreach portion of the Safe Streets for All program recommendations effort. And so we're going to continue this with the larger scale implementation, but we did initiate this process. And then we've also, though we do hope to expand to have more regular and targeted safety campaigns with the larger scale implementation, we are currently working with the Safe Streets for All, with the Street Smart campaign from COG on traffic safety education in multiple languages. So we are doing a little bit of that now. Then these are the proposed immediate next steps that we will take on within existing staff and resources. The first is to develop a Safe Streets for All policy that prioritizes the protection of human life in the planning, design, and operation of the Fairfax County roadway network. And then the second is to recommend revisions for state and local policies and plans related to transportation safety. And that will include the comprehensive plan, public facilities manual, state law, Vdot manuals and policies. And that'll be tackled in part with the Fairfax, the Active Fairfax Transportation Plan Phase 2. We will immediately require as soon as we can, require every future transportation project, including studies and capital projects, and then comprehensive plan amendments as well, to have a active transportation subject matter expert on the consultant team. We will prioritize maintenance efforts and capital improvements in high need areas along high risk pedestrian and bicycle corridors, and to provide access to activity centers like transit, school, parks, social services. And so we have started to outline a method of doing that with the board in terms of prioritizing projects with future funding. And then hosting internal trainings for county and Vdot staff on the Safe Streets for All approach and best practices. And then we will begin efforts to systematically report on safety with a annual Safe Streets for All report card, and then also with a collecting public safety concerns on a web dashboard. And then talking a little bit more in detail about the position, we will then also be simultaneously working to apply for another staff position for a Safe Streets for All program manager. And then part of the item to the board will also be just to establish the program as a whole. And then in fiscal year 2024, we'll also be requesting program funding for sort of more of the programmatic needs, like we could do interim improvements, studies, educational campaigns. That probably won't be a significant amount of funding, but enough to help us to have something to pull from to meet some of these goals that are on the next slide. So these goals are outlining what we believe to be the program manager's priorities. Now, as I mentioned, there's over 60 recommendations in the document. And so we pulled out our top, I believe it was 9 or 10. And some of them are pulling from multiple of the subject areas, but they are sort of covering some of the most comprehensive or the most key strategies that we feel like we need to start attacking right away to meet some of the goals of the program. So with we do expect to need additional funding from the board in order to be able to achieve a lot of these. So we've let the board know that. We kind of caveat all of this with that. But these are some of the first goals. So first, the countywide, to develop a countywide complete streets policy and design guide. And that will be include improving road design standards like the road design manual to meet Safe Streets for All principles. So that requires a lot of Vdot buy-in. To reduce vehicle speeds with a multi-pronged approach. So this one is one that I mentioned, targets multiple areas. So through design, by reducing operational design speeds, through policy by reducing posted speed limits, and then through education by increasing use of speed feedback signage. We plan to establish an interdisciplinary task force to oversee the Safe Streets for All program, which would include various agencies and community organizations. And then we will expedite implementation of small spot safety improvements, including some quick build interim solutions. And then we have a few more on the next slide. So we plan to improve active transportation safety to parks, schools, and activity centers. And that would include items like safe routes to school plans, safe routes to park plans, and bus stop safety plans. So there's quite a lot to do there. So we want to get started on that soon. Conducting walk and bicycle audits with communities to identify safety concerns, especially in our equity areas. Building out the active transportation network, which is a huge beast to tackle, obviously, but really important in order to meet some of the goals here. And then maintaining the active transportation network to prioritize safety and usability, and to make sure that like our facilities are free of hazard, debris, and obstructions, and that they're fully functional, the ones that we already have. And then lastly, a countywide lighting plan, which would be in partnership with the Department of Public Works and Environmental Services, who manages the streetlights in the county today. And then again, I caveat that while we do hope to have a program budget, a lot of these items would require additional funding. So they would be pending that support from the board. So that's all I have for today, and I'll take any questions that you all have about the program or about our next steps. Stop sharing unless we.
Well, looks like Erin's got her hand raised.
Sorry, I didn't realize I had my camera off that whole time.
Thanks, Lauren, for that presentation.
Sure.
I just had one question. I was curious. There's one bullet point about equity and working with communities. In general, broadly, will this plan include communication channels for anyone to report unsafe locations?
Yeah, so one of our goals even in the early stages is to have a web dashboard where we can ask for input from the community. So that is part of our intention. We're already kind of doing that now when we collect information for the active Fairfax transportation plan, but we want to make that more of a permanent feature on our website.
That's great.
Beth was next.
Hi, Beth Arnett, Park Authority. Just wondering, on the program manager priority slide, you had the safe routes to parks. Is that meaning it's a coordination with with the parks agency on that, or leading that, or at least kind of what is? And there's another one about the lighting. Is the streetlight team? Did they do the dark skies, or is that the environmental side of DPWES?
Okay, so to answer your first question, the Safe Routes to Parks is really targeting more so the activity to get to the park and less so what's happening in the park. So to take it back a little bit, our document has references for all of our agencies that we expect to have to partner with to achieve these goals. So obviously the Park Authority is a big partner and when it comes to getting to parks, and getting around in parks. But the goal of the park, the Safe Routes to Parks, is really targeting some of the infrastructure just outside of your park. So I think, does that answer that question?
And let me just actually add to that real quick. I mean, it was actually Park Authority board member, now Planning Commissioner Cortina, who planted that seed years ago. And it would, depending on resources, depending on staffing, for Safe Routes to School, for instance, you develop a map of what are the safe ways to get to a destination given today's infrastructure. And that might mean if there's a block missing here, you go around the block to the next block. And so it like Lauren said, it would be focused on the way to access the parks, but it would be potentially something like that, where we would develop maps for, again, we'd work with you. What are your priorities? Your major parks. I know you certainly have trespassing issues for at unapproved access locations, and so we certainly would be routing people to proper access locations, stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean, that's not to say that there wouldn't be improvements needed inside a park in order to get to the park, because obviously you might have parkland we're accessing by a park driveway or something that could benefit from having a path along it or something like that. But yeah, and then, okay, sorry, I'll let you follow up.
I just had a follow-up. I was just say, in your coordinations in terms of getting funding for positions, are there any conversations of working with the agencies to get other funding for their support to help you? Because I would say, being the trail coordinator in parks, the one person.
No, that's a really good point. Yeah, we're just talking about this position with the board as a starting point, and we definitely see that there's going to be a need for more positions. And I think that's a great point about Park Authority. We have obviously also thought about that with schools, that we need to have partners in all of these agencies. We can't decide, the board's not going to decide who gets funded in what positions get funded in Vdot, for instance, but they can support this program by having other positions in other agencies. So I think that is something that we will continue to consider once the program's a little more off and running and as it needs to grow. And then
The
you asked about
DPW,
dark,
yeah,
sorry.
DPW, the skies, the lighting, is that
Yeah,
just
so
with the
you asked about
lighting?
that. So I don't know, Chris, do you know about the dark sky?
Well, yeah, it's all lighting is nowadays is considerate of the dark sky concerns. DPW ES is the agency that leads our county's lighting. They manage our street light program. The board itself has asked about this question about shouldn't we have better lighting for pedestrian issues? Should we have a program? So that's on its own track, but depending on where that ends up, certainly from a programmatic safety point of view, we cannot help but to point out that lighting is something that is not consistent or even done very well in this county, and so we know that many of our fatalities and our injury crashes are happening in areas where it's not lit, and so we can't be silent on the subject. So that's why it's in the broader 60 business plan recommendations that are part of the overall recommendations. But as Lauren said, the devil's in the details, and how we work through that with our sister agencies and with the board's support for staff funding would all be played out over time. So that's sort of where we are and where the county is. As far as dark skies is concerned, all of the fixtures that are used today are cutoff fixtures, as they're called. So they focus their light downwards, and so that even if we had adequate pedestrian lighting everywhere with those fixtures, it should meet both of those needs.
Does DPW's the streetlight team, like the people who install streetlights and design it, do they manage the dark sky initiatives, or is that an environmental policy of DPW ES? A different faction, maybe.
I wasn't aware that the county itself had a dark sky initiative. I've certainly been aware of citizen advocacy, universally, internationally, for this issue, and certainly in parts of our county. But I wasn't aware that the county actually had one, other than, again, that due to sensitivity to that issue, we make an effort in all of our lighting to make them, if it's lighting a pedestrian facility, for instance, do we do pedestal lights that are just on the ground, or do we need to light the pedestrian with pedestrian scale lighting rather than overkill, which would be cobra heads and floodlights and that kind of stuff. And I mean, I know we do implement all of that as far as all of our county facilities, but I was not aware that there was a dark skies policy or program or effort within the county.
Hudgens was really into that initiative Supervisor Hudgens, when she was around, and obviously up in Drainsville and that sort of thing. But just something to look out for when you coordinate. I'm not sure if two different sides of DPW handle it, or if they cross paths. So sure. Just keep in mind. Thanks.
All right. Next up was Jim.
Yeah, thank you. I wanted to just throw kind of a hypothetical out there, just a scenario to sort of see how this would work. Is that my biggest pet peeve in our district is the right and left turns cutting across pathways, and people racing through to beat the oncoming traffic, or turning right, quickly, and not paying attention to the pedestrians and bicycles. And a lot of that is the radii that are used that are way too big. And I wonder, how would that kind of systematically be addressed throughout the county, especially on the main arterials? I'd like to see them all 25 mile per hour, 25-foot radii or less, you know, on every turn, but that's kind of pipe dream, but.
No, I think that's an important thing. So we currently have to follow the Virginia Department of Transportation Road Design Manual, except in Tyson's, which has special design standards that allow for tighter radii. So some of the factors that go into that are like there's a standard radius, but then there's also the design vehicles that we're using that's the biggest factor. So when they go to plot out how a truck is going to turn, what truck are they picking to plot is going to make a big difference. So we are hoping to implement countywide street design standards that are more like the Tyson's street design standards to meet the needs of our sort of urbanizing county that's different from other counties in the state. So that's the goal and one of the items. And so the first step to doing that is to identify the issues with the current road design manual like that one in order to be able to change them.
So it would be more in the intermediate pool of things, or?
Yeah, actually right now we already have actually started a similar effort within our section, that's our division of planning and site analysis. They started working on some urban street standards. So we're kind of underway in it, but they're looking at sort of more specific areas. And again, we want to be doing this countywide. So it's definitely in the earlier part of our work.
Great. And that's fantastic. And just to follow up, like on the street repaving which is coming up again, but when they did it on Fort Hunt, they did a great job in our district, but I couldn't quite get them to do the radii on all the streets. They could do it on some, you know, but the one that's the most dangerous is still that way. And they even came back and whited out one of them. It was pretty great. So like in these repaving projects, I think there's another one that's coming up on Mount Vernon Road or Highway, not the Parkway, but the road that would benefit from something like that. Will there be a way to systematically work with Vdot and the district engineers and people that are working on that were pretty great, you know. So it seems like this is a really good time to kind of get that to happen. I'm wondering how could that be sort of factored into this Safe Streets, where you could actually do something right now, like next week?
Yeah, so can you describe a little bit more about what you mean?
Well, when you go to repave, well, we did it on the Fort Hunt road last year. It was, and so I kept asking for radii on the turns to be 25. They're 30 or 35 now. They're much bigger, and they were able to go through and do some of them at that radius, but not all. You know, and I'm not sure why, but so it worked out pretty well. And it seems like there ought to be a more systematic way to just, as a matter of record, do that first, you know, just to make the tight radii. It's a 35-mile-an-hour road and a suburban thing that's now urbanized, you know. So every time you ride on the side path that goes along Fort Hunt, every time you cross it, turn, you're right
around the corner. Yeah.
I
know what you mean. So you're talking about the striping now.
Striping
of the corner. Right.
Yeah.
So we can do that, and that's a little easier actually to get a tighter radii, because if there's still the pavement behind it, then that allows the truck to use that excess pavement. So we do often get Vdot to add those radii. So we go through street by street, and any street that we feel like we could benefit from doing a reduction with the lanes, or adding bike lanes or whatever it might be, we will. And then those will be the streets where we'll go in and actually they're going to do fresh plans and they'll add those painted radii. The problem is that right now we don't have a system for addressing any of the other roads that we're not narrowing the lanes. So if we're not making a significant change, they're not going through and adding that striping. So I think that's a good point, that could we target all of the roads in the network that are being repaved, not just the ones that we're changing the striping on. So thanks for that comment. Yeah.
Thank you for that. That's great. Appreciate it.
Sure.
All right, Sean also has his hand up.
Hey guys, so quick question. Your discussion about the lighting brought up a question for me, which is I've never seen any opportunity to provide public input to lighting issues. And I would really like to have somebody from DPW at least come here so that we can kind of have a discussion with them. Because, you know, lighting, especially at crosswalks, is such a major issue. And there are so many locations around the county where it is just terrible. And it's hard to get that, again, that conversation, that input. And so I would really love to have DPW come to this forum at the least to have that discussion with them.
Thanks, Sean. That's a good point. I think what would actually be more productive is if we get to the bottom of where we are as a county with the board's question. The board has asked this question about improving lighting, and I'm not directly involved in that. Neither is Lauren. DPW would before the board has asked this question, they would tell you, and that's what they've told me for years, is the board has never established a program for lighting pedestrian facilities. And if the board would like to establish a program for lighting pedestrian facilities, just give them the manpower and the funding, and they would gladly do that. So it's not that there's not knowledge of this issue. It's that in my 20 years at the county, that's been the answer, that the board hasn't established this as a program or a priority. Even our street lights for cars are 90+% provided by development activity. So we don't, as a county or as part of Vdot projects, go out and light streets. It is a requirement of developers, and so that's how we typically have obtained that infrastructure. So I would suggest that Lauren and I touch base with the DPW folks, see where we are, where the county is with that question that the board has asked, and then yes, depending on where that is and who would be the right person, it would probably be them to speak to that. It would be timely, even if we haven't reached a conclusion yet, for the for the Trails Committee to provide input. Thank you.
So, Lauren, I have a question. We have the last two sessions been hammering out a letter to be sent to the Board of Supervisors. Are you familiar with that whole process?
Is it on the Safe Routes to School position?
Yes.
Yes, I am.
Okay, so the letter asks that, I want to get the wording right here. And I haven't sent it out, so don't anybody get excited yet. So sorry, it got ahead of me. But TSB urges the Board of Supervisors to exhaust all funding opportunities to ensure the continuity of the Safe Routes to School non-infrastructure program and associated full-time position, not specified, although the previous paragraph refers to it as a FCPS position, as it was in the past, using county funds beginning in the FCPS 2022-2023 school year. So we're asking them for essentially permanent funding for a Safe Routes to School position in FCPS. So are we barking up the wrong tree, or are we working at cross purposes? I mean, it would be nice if we integrated what you're headed for asking for with what we're asking for. Is that or
I don't think I think we need both positions. I think we're in support of needing both positions. The school position serves a different purpose and is within schools for a reason, to make sure that they are coordinating directly with the schools and in a way that we can't as transportation staff. And so we see those positions as being synergistic. Does that answer your question?
Yes, that answers my question, although I would like to include a statement like that to the letter, because otherwise, it sounds like it's two independent efforts not aware of each other, right? and I really want to incorporate our knowledge of what you're about to do with Safe Routes to School in a letter that we're putting to the Board of Supervisors on exactly the same topic.
And so, Ken, I would suggest maybe a way to do that is, as the board considers a Safe Streets for All plan, that a key component of that is the school's Safe Routes to School coordinator. Just as an example to what Lauren's talking about, it's a similar answer that I gave Beth on parks. The school's position is an internal position. It deals with, encouragement, the access issues at schools, so on and so forth. But there's a role for FCDOT for the external component, such as, again, we've got 125 schools that we could map walking routes, but we would do that with schools because they determine, who's a bus rider and who's not. So that might just be the way to put it, that as the board considers moving towards a Safe Streets for All program, an existing
this would be
critical need is
understand that it would be integrated with the Safe Streets to School, Safe Streets for All program. But I think it behooves us to explain to the board why it is exactly what you guys have just said, why it is important for the FCPS position not to be gapped. And because it creates it within FCPS hierarchy, it allows for much more efficient communication across the school hierarchy, and can in fact coordinate in areas that FCD staff cannot. And I think that's a thought needs to find its way into our advocacy, because otherwise it looks like we're kind of shotgunning all this and we're not talking to each other.
Agreed.
Okay, so I'm just checking with you, and then of course when we get to that point, I'm going to have to talk to Sean and the rest of the committee about amending the letter to add something to that effect. But I'm glad that we got this. I'm not glad that I procrastinated, but taking advantages of my procrastination, that we can in fact look like we've got two things going on at the same time. Lauren, do we have your presentation? I just want to use the right words. So
not yet, but David can probably give it to you guys.
Okay, I'll need it just to be sure that I use the right words. Safe Streets for All is the overarching title for your program. Is that correct?
Program, right? The board has not formally approved the program yet, but we're going to them in May.
But it's considering it.
Yes.
It's
and they know about it. I mean, we've been to the transportation committee multiple times now.
You were asked to do it, right?
Basically, yes. Yeah.
But what was that January meeting?
That was the January board item. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Good. Jim.
Yeah, I just had brought up one other question about the Route 1 corridor and how that fits into the overall priorities. I know that a lot of the intersections now have the leading pedestrian interval, so things are happening there. I just wondered how does that factor into the priorities, and how does it address that board letter and our follow-up to it?
So, I mean, I think this program is really looking at the big picture of what needs to change through all these different angles, right? Through planning, through design, through our monitoring and evaluation, and through our policies. So I would say that the program is not necessarily specifically targeting, a project or a corridor, but more of this framework that we're working within that can limit our ability to design in a way that's focused on safety for the vulnerable road users. So I don't know that there's anything specifically about Route 1 that we're looking at like right away, other than potentially some, there's like discussion of in the recommendations that we can do quick build interim solutions. So, it's possible that if we find locations in the corridor that are going to have long-term solutions and we can coordinate with VDOT to do shorter term solutions in addition to those that we've already done, then that's an opportunity. But I don't know that there's anything that's like, every recommendation of this program could probably be applied to the corridor, right? So
yeah, absolutely. But I wonder, like the intersection, I think it's Boswell and Route 1 now has 4 crosswalks.
Yeah,
I would go out and take a picture or a video with the leading pedestrian interval and put it in your report, because it's like people are so happy that they don't have to walk all the way around and do all that right now. It's incredible. So
I'm glad to hear it's all done.
Yeah, it's done. Yeah. Well, I don't know, but it is done, and people are it's safer and it's much better. So the people we're just walking right across now. They're in a crosswalk and they have the signal to work with. So. Great. Those are great examples. I'd like to just see more of it, just highlighted to say, here's an example of how this kind of thinking has improved your situation,
Yeah, and that's an example too of how VDOT's working on this problem too. So their highway safety improvement program, they're targeting these systemic solutions, including crosswalks at signalized intersections, and that's how that one was funded. So they have finished their backplate work, like they were doing those high retro reflective backplates. They finished that in all the easily achievable locations. They're almost done with I think they finished their flashing yellow arrow work. So they're really hitting hard on the signalized crosswalks and the unsignalized intersections over the next 5 years. So we're all working anyway to that.
I would just toot the horn loudly because it's great. Just doing it. It's fantastic. Thank you.
Sure. Bob's got a question, it seems.
Yes. Yeah, this is Bob Cosgriff. This is off the topic we were just discussing here, but I'm looking at the guest list and there's a name there that I'm not sure I heard in the introductions or the roll call. Erica Christ, representing, I'm keeping notes on this meeting. I'm not taking the minutes, but I do keep my own notes. I just like to know who everybody is. Did I hear you say Drainsville?
Sure. Hi, I'm Erica Christ. Can you hear me?
Yes. Hi, Erica.
Yeah, sorry, I joined late because I was out to eat, but I am mostly just interested because I live on the Route 1 corridor, and I recently had started a news site called On the Move, so I'm interested in all kinds of transportation news around the area. So that's why I tuned in.
Well, welcome. Okay, so you're from Jim Klein's district then? Correct?
I believe so, yes.
For the Lee district.
Probably.
It's on both.
I'm actually I'm Mount Vernon district. I'm in Mount Zephyr, near South County.
Fantastic.
Thank you for coming.
Okay, any more questions on the safe routes to school topic? All right, gives us an opportunity to move on to the staff report. And I don't know the name next to it, so whoever's going to do the staff report, take it away.
Sure. Hello again. This is Chris. Let me pull up the agenda real quick. All right. So vacant committee seats. I did reach out to both the Disability Service Board and the Providence District. They are aware of their vacancies. Neither of them had any specific news to report, but Providence had hoped that maybe when the board makes appointments in May that they would have somebody, but they don't have anybody yet. And the Disability Services Board chairman actually followed up with me after I contacted their staff, and again indicated that they are aware of the vacancies and they're actively soliciting members for consideration. So Unless there's any questions, that's what I can tell you about that. I should mention, we're going to excuse Lauren from the meeting tonight at this point. So thank you, Lauren, for your presentation. And David and I will be here for the rest of the meeting.
Thanks, Lauren.
The Burke VRE trail dedication. We had the proverbial ribbon cutting for the Burke VRE trail. This is the latest Burke VRE trail. We previously, I guess 5 to 8 years ago, did another one. This connects to the west from the Burke VRE. It's a 10-foot trail with a big retaining wall and access connecting really the whole the western end of the Burke Center community with a direct route to the Burke VRE, and then from a regional connectivity point of view, it opens up the connection to the other Burke VRE trail, which goes all the way over to Burke Lake Road, connects to the Park Authority's Liberty Bell Trail, which connects to Burke Road. So it really is the last link connecting, say, the Fairfax County Parkway all the way over to Rolling Road on a decent off-road corridor. So Sean, unless you want to add something about that, Sean was there, joined us, and was helping publicize it from FAB's perspective. And then speaking of Sean asked about Rolling Road updates. So David, I'm going to request control and share a document that I have, or I guess it's not a document, a picture that I have of rolling.
Share. I don't think you need to ask for it. There you go.
Well, it says request control. So, Rolling Road south of Keene Mill Road, actually between Old Keene Mill Road and the Fairfax County Parkway, Franconia Springfield. I guess it changed its names right there. Is planned to be widened to a 4-lane road with pedestrian and bicycle facilities on both sides. Sean, I did reach out to Vdot. They said their web page needs to be updated when it comes to schedule and cost. So I cannot report on schedule and cost. I'm trying to zoom in so we can see it better and scroll to the top. Well, I want to go to the top anymore. Well, anyway, we'll start here. They did confirm that the cross section is still the same. So it is a very tight corridor. If you drive or bike or walk down Rolling Road, it's a 2-lane road right now that was built through 1970s subdivisions that tried to anticipate the need for widening with right-of-way. But to me, as a professional, it's amazing that we're going to be able to fit a 4-lane road through there. So that being said, there's not a lot of wiggle room for things, and so we did have to make some compromises. We're not getting a 10-foot shared use path, for instance. What we're getting is an 8-foot facility on one side that is an 8-foot. That's the county's PF Public Facilities Manual, flexible, context-sensitive trail, but it is not the Vdot standard 10-foot shared use path. So again, hopefully you can see what I just did there. I'm cutting off between Viola and Birmingham. It's a 8-foot shared use path with a 2-foot buffer to a power pole, which is then I guess a 4-foot buffer to the road. And then on the other side, traditional sidewalk, continuing Birmingham to Barnack. Again, an 8-foot shared use path with a wider buffer is available, or maybe that does say 5-foot up in the previous one. And then again, the sidewalk on the I guess we're looking I would call that the shared use path being on the west side and the sidewalk being on the east side. And then lastly, from Barnack to, well, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe that's north to south. Barnack to Keene Mill Road, again, a shared use path on one side and a sidewalk on the other side. So before I take this down, Sean or anyone else, is there any questions about the rolling road widening project and the ped bike facilities?
When is that taking place?
That's what Vdot has not was not firm on. So they broke that project into phase 1 and phase 2. Phase 1 was the intersection improvements that they just did at Keene Mill over the past couple of years, which are now completed. This is funded, unless costs has escalated. It was supposed to play out over the next few years, but they said that their webpage needs updating. So to me, that tells me that both the costs and the schedule are probably going to be adjusted. So all I did was Google Vdot rolling road project, and that took me to their webpage. So that would tell you what they previously anticipated, but they're in the process of updating that information.
My daughter has her learner's permit, and we drive that way to school every day from Mount Vernon District to West Springfield High School. So might have to find an alternate route, especially when she's learning to drive.
Oh, that's good practice.
We'll see. Very true.
Well, did you figure out which side the 8-foot path would be on?
I thought it was on the west side, and I was confused by the fact that these segments ended up with Keene Mill on the bottom. If I was doing that, I would have put Keene Mill on the top. My recollection in talking, I know we had some negotiations down at the southern end on how we were going to make that work, and down there it was on the west side. So I'm 90% confident that it's on the west side that the shared use path is.
But it's going to be on the same side for the whole
yes.
length.
Yes.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, any other questions on Rolling Road? I will stop sharing. Come back up. Look at the agenda. Vdot 2022 paving plan. So we do have those meetings scheduled for next week. If you go to our FCDOT webpage, there's the information is there. We consolidated the meetings into group it instead of 9 different public meetings for the 9 different magisterial districts. We consolidated them based on efficiency of staff, but also the paving process this year is smaller than previous years because of the cost of asphalt. So VDOT is not able to pave as much quantity as they were previously. But then from our perspective, as we look for potential bike lane candidates, I've always predicted that there will be diminishing returns. As we've been doing this for 5 to 10 years, we've striped hundreds of miles of bike lanes on roads that were previously wide. So as every year's roads come up, there's not as many wide roads yet that are good candidates. So we have less candidates for striping, and we have less actual paving because of VDOT's budget and the prices, the cost of asphalt. Asphalt is a commodity that it's affected like every other inflation that we're dealing with these days, but in particular this summer, both the I-66 project and the Route 7 project will be heavily involved with asphalt paving, and so there's limited resources, and therefore supply and demand is even worse when it comes to pricing for asphalt this summer. So we've combined our meetings for next week. They're Tuesday and Thursday night, I believe. Here, let me get my facts straight. They are the 19th and the 21st. So that's, no, there's one for 18th, 19th, and 21st. So on the 18th, it's Drainesville, Hunter Mill, and Providence. On the 19th, it's Lee, Mount Vernon, and Springfield. Those are each combined meetings. So again, 18th, Drainesville, Hunter Mill, Providence. 19th, Lee, Mount Vernon, Springfield. And then on the 21st, we have two different meetings. We have a combined Braddock and Mason meeting, and then we have a separate Sully meeting. So again, you can go to our FCDOT website or just the county's website and type in 2022 paving meetings or something to that effect. That should get you to where those are. The specifics of what we're looking at this year, I'll just give some highlights. There's a section of Braddock Road out west of, in the western part of Sully, where Braddock is a 2-lane road, west of Stone Road, where it's exceptionally wide. We're looking at being able to do bike lanes there. In the Lee District, we have Lockheed Boulevard between Route 1 and Huntley Meadows. In the Providence District, we have Cottage Street between Gallows and Cedar, and Wolf Trap Road between Gallows and the End. And then in the Sully District, we have Centerville Farms Road for buffered bike lanes between Route 29 and Stringfellow. So if for those members that are new, I guess I should back up. Vdot paves the road every summer. It's essentially a blank canvas, so we can put the striping down a different way at essentially no cost. Vdot actually absorbs that cost. As Lauren indicated in her presentation, there's only so many roads that we have that additional striping flexibility in Vdot's paving contracts, but Vdot has been a willing partner with us. I describe it as a good news Vdot story. Vdot catches a lot of crap for potholes and snow plowing, but this is really something that, again, for 5 or 10 years, they've been an excellent partner to the county. And even though this is the Trails, Sidewalks, and Bikeways Committee, we've really pivoted to, in addition to acknowledging the benefit of having a safe space for bicycling, we know that the communities are not bicyclists, and that there's sometimes a lack of understanding about why we would do things for bicyclists. But what the communities do understand is the need for speed reduction and the quality of life benefits that come with slower cars, having cars more buffered from the sidewalks, having less exposure risk to pedestrians crossing a road that is essentially narrowed, because those simple white stripes bring those vehicles to the middle of the road. And so as a pedestrian, when you're leaving the curb, you don't have to worry about getting run over in the bike lane portion. You have to watch for the cars in the middle. So there's all these other tangible benefits to the community that come from these striping changes. As this process has evolved over the years, VDOT's engineering has improved. So today we really properly engineer all the parallel parking spaces, the radiuses like Jim and Lauren were just talking about, and then also crosswalks. So in the early years, we didn't have the manpower to review crosswalks, but now with my staff and with VDOT, we look at all these roads for crosswalk improvements. We conduct crosswalk studies that are required to ensure that it's a safe location for crosswalks. So in addition to those bike lanes that I mentioned, we have proposed crosswalks. We've added that to our presentations this year. So that's something new. It's somewhat driven by the fact that there's less bike lanes, and so let's fill the space with crosswalks. But it's also important because when we put crosswalks where they weren't before, because of the sight distance requirements for crosswalks, we're going to need to restrict parking, and we're typically talking residential neighborhoods where, parking in front of people's house is a very serious subject. So we're, obviously transparent in that we want the communities to know, hey, we're proposing this pedestrian safety improvement. You're going to get a crosswalk. However, for you people who live, right next to this crosswalk, you may not be able to park in front of your house anymore. And so, with our staff history with bike lanes, it's bike parking is the third rail of bike lanes. So you never get anywhere with the public if you say we're going to take away your parallel parking to provide bike lanes. But we're hoping that we do educate the community on the importance of pedestrian safety, and that they're willing to, consider the loss of parking, or, if they need to park on the street, move down the street somewhere. Because, for instance, one of these crosswalks on Madrillen in Tyson's had 70 pedestrians in an hour. And that's a huge number. Our threshold for justifying a crosswalk is 20 pedestrians, or if we're talking vulnerable users such as children or the elderly, even less than 20. So 70 is a huge number. So the locations that we are considering crosswalks, and again, this is on our website, but some of the highlights are Greeley, says Greeley Road, but I think that's Greeley Boulevard in the Braddock and Lee district, Summer Ridge Road, Westmoreland Road, Summer Ridge Road's in the Lee district, Westmoreland Road, not Westmoreland Street, Westmoreland Road in the Mason district, 2 crosswalks, Providence district, Madrillen Road at 2 locations, Stonewall Drive, Wolf Trap Road, and Hibbard Street, and in the Springfield district, Autumn Willow Drive, as well as Fair Lakes Boulevard, and in the Sully district, Newton Patent Drive. So that's a sort of long-winded summary of where we are. Again, this is an annual process, and again, for those of you who are new, Vdot tells us their draft information. We review it as staff. We go to the board members first. We brief the board members on the opportunities. We have this public process next week where we make the public aware, get input from the public if anything we may have missed. There's certainly been at least one year where we did miss something and we had to pivot and change our plans due to community input. And then it's a very dynamic process. The paving process runs from April to November. And again, Vdot has been very accommodating to be willing to do this, but it absolutely complicates their paving contracts. And so it happens very quick. Seems like it never ends, because in the fall we start all over again. So with that, I'll stop and we'll see if anyone has any questions.
Looks like Howard's got his hand up.
Chris, you didn't mention Old Key Mill Road. Excuse me. You're narrowing the lanes. Are the berms going to have any other striping on them, or is it just going to be the edge of the road paved?
Thank you, Howard. That's a good question. So first of all, I believe Old Keene Mill Road was shortened. It wasn't originally. It was Old Keene Mill in both the Springfield and Lee districts. So starting west of Rolling Road, going all the way to the Springfield CBD. I think part of that was cut out because of their, like I said, the paving costs. But the idea was to do both. So in the areas where there's not curb and gutter on the shoulder, we're narrowing the lanes and providing a shoulder. In areas where there is curb and gutter on both sides, we're narrowing the lanes and then moving in what we call the shy line on what I would call the fast lane on the median. And then that would our typical median at an intersection is a 4-foot median. So if we move that painted line in, typically the shy line's a foot. We're proposing to move it in more than 1 foot based on the narrowing of the lane widths. That would allow us to do future median refuge projects, because a median refuge for a bicyclist or a pedestrian really needs to be 6 feet or 8 feet. So we're doing both. Again, in an open section where the shoulder does not have a curb and gutter, we would be narrowing it and typically providing a shoulder. Where both sides of the road have curb and gutter, we'd be doing the opposite. We'd be narrowing it and providing a bigger buffer around the medians.
Will that be comfortable for bicyclists or probably not?
Confident bicyclists, but not all ages and ability. There's not enough room to come up with a proper bike lane or a buffered bike lane.
Thank you.
Jim, is that a new hand?
Yeah, that's a new hand. Sorry. I just want to report back that the work that was done on Fort Hunt last year, I keep praising it. It's worthwhile. But there's actually now more regular commuters using the shoulders between Bellevue and on. It's really great to see people doing that. There's one guy even passed me, but it's my fault. But there's that's a new thing, usually I can just plod along, but now there's a real commuting going on. It's really great. So I commend you for, in that case, it's just bikeable shoulders. We can get consistently enough space to get, a bike lane that's close. But I hope there's a way to ensure that continues, that maybe not this year, but, whenever they do the next section of Fort Hunt.
Well, so certainly to what you're commenting on and what Howard just commented on, to VDOT's credit, VDOT is systematically narrowing travel lanes as part of this process. So that's a 180 from the conversation that we would have had with VDOT 10 years ago. But so there's an acknowledgement that the 12-foot lane is a dinosaur. And often we have, more than 12-foot lanes, and that they really do need to be 11-foot lanes, which is pretty much our standard best practices for them. And so that's how they actually came up with the Keene Mill idea. They, we didn't, again, there's not room for bike lanes, but they said, okay, these lanes are too wide. If we narrow them, how do we use that space? And that's where we came up with the shoulders on the open section and the median in the constrained section. So it is something we're looking at, but again, like Lauren said, only on the road where we have striping changes in the contracts. And so VDOT is still limited by not being able to do this on 100% of what they're paving, but they're prioritizing the roads such as Fort Hunt and Keene Mill.
Great, thank you.
And unless I miss my guess, you're well on the way to building a bridge over the Beltway.
Oh yeah, did you see that? Man, that thing is massive. If you go up on Old Meadow and you see like all the heavy equipment and the dump trucks moving back and forth between those apartments, I took a picture and I showed it to Lauren and Nicole. I was like, look how much effort goes into building a trail. Of course, there's a bridge over the Beltway.
This is a bridge over the Beltway. A bicycle bridge over the Beltway is noteworthy.
And I wanted
in the committee minutes.
Yes. This was beginning of last week. I was up there for a field meeting. The bridge structure itself is sitting in the middle of the Beltway in a work zone. The approach ramps are on Old Meadows, stacks of steel supports. So it's scheduled for completion this summer, and like I said, they are well underway. Old Meadow is all torn up at the top of Old Meadow. So it's a major project. It's taken a decade. This is the last remaining missing crossing from the original 495 hot lanes. So that most of the bridges in the 495 hot lanes were rebuilt, and us and Vdot were unified in making the company build pedestrian bicycle accommodations on all the other bridges, but the three locations that didn't, or the two locations that nothing was able to be firmed up was the Route 123 crossing and the Route 50 crossing. And so we had originally studied the Route 123 crossing and had proposed a traditional shared use path, at grade crossings, so the ramps, and we took that to the public. I think they said in 2017. It's been a long. We had a public hearing in 2017, and both the public and staff looked at one of those ramps, which is the two-lane on ramp from Tyson's Corner, the eastbound 123 to southbound 495, two-lane on ramp, and we were like, that's just, there's no way.
Crossing there is
yeah,
like
there's no way that that's safe as an at-grade crossing. So we regrouped, and then we studied alternate bridge crossing locations, considering origin, destination, demand, but also the feasibility of building a bridge. The location that was chosen, we determined, we picked the top of Old Meadow area in general because it serves today's population. That the Dolly Madison Apartments is a huge apartment complex, and it, for that matter, just past them is Pemmon Hills. So today's population is actually better served by that bridge. As you know, the rest of Tyson's gets built with skyscrapers. It's possible that another crossing around 123 would be desirable, but then we've also built the Jones Branch connector, so that's a crossing over to Tyson's too. Then the other trick was, where was there room in the Beltway for us to land a bridge pier in the middle, because a span that would go over the entire Beltway was going to be much more expensive. And so because of the way the Jersey wall of the hot lanes is configured, there's a fat area in that Jersey wall that allows for a bridge pier there. So yes, thank you for mentioning that, Ken. That's a 13, for those that always ask, why can't we build a ped bridge there? Well, today's price for a ped bridge is $13 million. So that's an expensive project, but one that, you know, we've all been totally committed to, and again, is about to, in a few months, be finally realized.
Can you comment on the, I'm kind of nervous about the bicycle approach, especially from the Tyson side. Because right now that road around Tyson's doesn't seem to be very bikeable.
Yeah, sure. So there is a shared use path along what I call the ring road. I think it's got a name now, like Tyson's 1 or something like that. But there is a shared use path on the outside of the ring road. We actually had to establish a public access easement to take it all the way back to the West Park Bridge, because that's private property on that side, and Vdot was not going to build a $13 million ped bridge without a public access easement. So that's to the north. To the south, the shared use path probably ends at the traffic signal on the ring road, where the ring road turns 90 degrees, and whatever you would call the road that goes to what is that? It's the old Gallows alignment. It's got a different name when it crosses the bridge over Route 7 that goes over to Gallows. Drawn up Towers. Is that Towers Crescent? That might be Towers Crescent. I can't remember. But so there, you're correct. That's that particular approach coming from the south is certainly imperfect. There's only a catwalk sidewalk on the bridge. That was paved a few years ago, and I think we did introduce a three-way stop there, but and I think we did some bike lanes, now that I think about it, but we were limited by the bridge structure. I'm pulling up Google Maps real quick to see what I can see, but you know, the whole, you know, with paving or with yeah, that is called Towers Crescent. With paving and with, you know, even building a $13 million project, things have to tie into existing infrastructure. So yeah, Towers Crescent Bridge used to be a 4-lane undivided bridge. There is a buffered bike lane now going across that bridge to Gallows, and then again a 3-way stop that we introduced down at the ring road. So it's maybe not an all ages and ability road. It does look like the bike lane disappears for the right turn lane, so it becomes a shared right turn lane into the ring road. But it's a 3-way stop now, which is a lot better than the way that it was. And then on the ring road, there are bike lanes. Or here, I'm sorry, I guess I could share my screen, show you what I'm seeing. Here, share. Boom, boom. So this is the ring road leading away from Towers Crescent. It does have a bike lane there going back to Towers Crescent. There's a bike lane heading south, and then the bike lane heading north. It exists over the bridge, so this used to be a 4-lane undivided bridge. Now it's only 2 travel lanes with that extra space given to the bicyclists, but because of the need for the turn lane, it's a shared facility there. So there's not a shared use path. You continue around in a shared environment, but then, as I said, once we get to the signal on the mall for the ring road, then that's where the shared use path picks up. So here at the signal for the ring road, the mall has installed a proper shared use path, and if you can see my cursor right about where it starts to go up the hill here, there's even some cones there. Look, we must have started, when is this? Yeah, September 2021. Where those barrels
That's where the
are,
bridge lands.
that is where the bridge lands, exactly. So.
And that shared use path continues to the north, right?
Continues up to the West Park Bridge, which crosses over to Tyson's 2.
I guess I didn't notice it because there was never a bridge there, so it was never useful to bike up there.
Well, that's always been, once the Towers Crescent Bridge and the West Park bridges were built, that's always been, the least dramatic way to ride a bike over to Tyson's 2, rather than sticking with Gallows and International and Route 7 or whatever. But again, it's obviously busy with Tyson's Corner Mall and everything else. So it's always been a goal of ours to improve upon that connection, because we know that that's how those 2 bridges are key to mobility for bicyclists in Tyson's. And so I just looked back at the agenda. That's all I really had to discuss for tonight, I think, unless anyone else wants to talk about anything else. For staff report, that is. Any questions?
Any other questions for staff?
Projects or otherwise?
Okay, thanks, Chris. So we're approaching 8:30. This is a time where we normally reserve time for members of the public to have a say or tell us if they want to ask any questions of the committee or anybody else. Erica Christ is our only member of the public. And so, Erica, the floor is yours. If you have any questions or you want to express any concerns or whatever, we're required, and we're more than happy to have non-members of the committee let us know what's on their mind. You don't have to say anything, but it's up to you.
I really appreciate that. I don't know that I have any specific questions. I try to keep up with Vdot and FCDOT on the latest things that they're doing. I'm very focused on the Richmond Highway Corridor, like I said, because I write about it. And I am familiar with the Boswell pedestrian improvements, which I'm happy about. And I've written about like the Grist Mill bike trail, about Mount Vernon Memorial, bike trail there. So anything related to the Route 1 area I'm interested in. So I appreciate having been able to listen in tonight. So thank you all for the information.
Well, that's an important part of the bike network for the county, so that's really important to all of us. So I have to agree with you. But yes, so glad we could have you. You're always welcome, of course. Okay. So we can actually dive into some of our active and unresolved issues. The first bullet deals with Braddock Road improvements / Route 1 pedestrian safety issues / embark update. So first on the list is Braddock Road improvement. And I guess the question I would have for staff is, has there been any movement on the spot improvements process for Braddock Road? I know there've been some community meetings, and the staff and others have maybe an opportunity to absorb the comments of the community meetings. So is there anything going? The elephant in the middle of the table on that particular project is this pedestrian bridge that's in a questionable location, and as Chris just pointed out, they aren't cheap. So I'm kind of wondering if there's a rethinking of the position and location of the pedestrian bridge.
So, I was just pulling up the web page. I thought there's a meeting coming up, but it may not be scheduled yet. So Vdot is our consultant, so to speak, for this. Vdot is building, will be building this project for us. They did have some updated meetings, but I'm looking at their webpage and I'm design public hearing winter 22-23, which sounds like later this year. I thought there was maybe something coming up soon. As far as the pedestrian bridge at the Kings Park Shopping Center, I know that we've had some discussions about should that be part of the project or not, or should that be part of the project's in phases. So should that be considered for a future phase of the project? The challenge with pedestrian bridges beyond their expanse is that if it's not convenient to use, people don't use them. And since we are having crosswalks at Burke Lake and Braddock, it's questionable whether a pedestrian bridge would be used. So therefore, what's the benefit cost of that? The original pedestrian bridge idea was tied to having a structured parking there for a transit transfer facility, as we call them. And so if you're building a parking garage on one side, then all of a sudden, running a bridge to the other side is not a standalone project and makes more sense because you've got the structure on the one side, and then more importantly, you've got not just the shopping center as a destination, but a lot of bus transit capacity as a destination. So I haven't been directly involved in any discussions about that since late last year, but I do hear the briefings from my director, and I thought there was something coming up, but I'm not seeing it on the webpage. We can follow up and find out where that is, and then that might be the subject for a future presentation. But let me make a note of that.
And this is also in this bullet is the Route 1 pedestrian safety issues that Jim's asked about. Jim, you have any more questions on that or embark?
There we go. Just the status of the speed study, which isn't speeding along as fast as the drivers on Route 1. I wonder if you could maybe give us a little update on that years-long study that should have been done by now.
Yeah, it is a years-long study. I don't know the outcome. I thought maybe that they were reaching an outcome soon, but I certainly wouldn't want to give you incorrect information about an outcome. So I don't think, again, Vdot was receptive to it. Vdot's Richmond gave their acceptance of the need for this, and it taking into consideration adjacent land use and other things that traditionally did not go into a Vdot speed study. So that I view all of that as positive, and I would expect a positive outcome. But what the actual number is of the outcome is, I don't know if that's been decided yet, and I wouldn't want to.
There was supposed to be another public meeting in the spring sometime. I guess we're in the spring, but
we are.
Got a couple more months to go.
Okay, funny, Jim. I just sent a note to. I'm sorry. I just sent a note to Vdot asking that exact question. I'm waiting for them to get back to me, but that was what I had last heard to spring.
We're in spring.
At least in terms of whether the speed will be reduced prior to I guess, is it prior to BRT or prior to the widening or something like that?
Both.
So.
Yeah. And I think, Chris, you had mentioned that the project is being designed for the 35-mile-per-hour speed.
We'd already been given the go-ahead to modify our design to assume that the speed would be reduced, and we're bearing the risk of preparing a design based on that assumption, and if that was wrong, then we'd have to change our design. But yes, we are designing it to a reduced speed. And Erica's question is a good question. I would assume once they reach that conclusion, we're still a few years from the projects being constructed, so I would assume that they would go ahead and implement that speed reduction in advance of the projects.
I think that's all I have. Route 1.
Okay, so we move on to our liaison with the Transportation Committee, and that would also be you, Jim. So it isn't all you have.
So that was the idea of the gentleman on the Transportation Committee, and we have not really communicated or coordinated much. So I think we could probably just scratch it off. I think it's kind of a dead issue at the moment.
Check. Okay. Let us know if it gets more active. Karen Ampa has not joined us. Is that correct? Okay. Then, Chris, we're going to put you on the spot for some updates that we've been asking about, Trails Projects updates. Our list starts with the Route 50 transportation study that Howard asked about.
Sure. So we're doing what's called a Gallows Road multimodal study. This is an outgrowth of the comprehensive plan work that was done in the Merrifield, Unova area. So as part of that Gallows Road multimodal study, they are studying ped bridge locations in that Fairview Park, Unova area. That effort has just begun. It's what I was told by the planning staff is that that's where that is. It's not a separate study for the bridges. It's for the bridge. It's a separate study. It's a comprehensive study of the Gallows corridor and the lack of access to the Gallows corridor created by the
Gallows corridor, not the Route 50 corridor, right?
Correct. It's Gallows from Unova up to Tyson's, but it's acknowledged that the Beltway is a barrier to access the Gallows corridor. So that's how that's being studied. That's being led by our planning group, which did the comprehensive plan work, and they have a consultant on board. But again, this has just been started recently.
So if the ped bridge you're asking about were ever to be built, this would be a ped bridge over the Beltway in that area, correct?
Yes, the between the trails plan and the bike plan, there's actually a suggestion of 2 ped bridges, one south of 50, one north of 50. But that's what the study will try to refine further.
Right.
Will there be opportunities for the public to be involved in the study?
Sure. Everything we do is transparent, so there'll be public meetings. Right now, it's in our planning group. So Mike Garcia, Howard, if you have his contact information from the previous work, he's the section chief of that section, and I don't recall which of his staff is the project manager for this. But yes, there absolutely will be. Typically, we do beginning and an ending public involvement, like something at the beginning to get input and then something at the end to give results.
So how about 495 next?
Well, there's two next now. So if you haven't heard, there's South next. So North next is next. That's the end of next. But now there's also South next. So North next is proceeding as been publicly shared, with Maryland seeming to be coming to the ability to commit to their portion. So ultimately, it seems as if the trail along our part of the Beltway will connect with a rebuilt Cabin Jaw Bridge, which will connect to ped bike assets on the Maryland side of the river. I did hear recently that the National Park Service removed their opposition to connecting to the C&O Canal.
Woohoo!
Which was based on, well, that'll just bring more people to the C&O Canal.
Yeah,
Exactly. That's the idea. So that they had a groundbreaking. So that's I haven't gone north of Tyson's recently, but I assume that you will start to see lots of construction activity. If you can imagine Interstate 66 up there, that's what you're gonna see. So that'll be a trail. Again, from the Cabin John Bridge, it'll start on the east side of the Beltway to Georgetown Pike. At Georgetown Pike, it crosses to the west side of the Beltway and runs along the west side all the way to Lewinsville. And then we were not able to find a way to get it directly into Tyson. So at Lewinsville, it'll go back on the east side of the Beltway on Lewinsville to 123, which connects to a new facility that we just built under the Dulles Toll Road to get you to Tyson's. The newest next is, I don't know if it's got an acronym, if it's, it can't possibly be SEXT, Southern Extension, but there's a new plan to
it's the SEL.
Is that what it is?
It's the South Side Express Lanes.
Okay. So the last part of the Beltway that has been, ignored, and previous Supervisor Kaufman had long made the observation that no one is giving any love to the section of the Beltway from the Springfield interchange through Van Dorn to Telegraph, because of course the Woodrow Wilson Bridge built from Telegraph to the Woodrow Wilson Bridge, and the Springfield interchange built that. And that section between that is still the 1975 Capitol Beltway. That is now part of a proposal that Vdot has received, public-private partnership kind of deal. It's probably the same guys that operate the rest of the Beltway, to build a toll facility in the median toll HOV facility in the median and connect that with the Woodrow Wilson Bridge. If you're familiar with the Woodrow Wilson Bridge, it was built with express lanes in the middle and local lanes on the outside, and so then that would be an easy conversion that those could become hot lanes. There's actually space in the express lanes for a third lane that was originally multimodal, like would that be light rail or bus? So I'm not familiar with what anybody's proposing today, but in either case, there's a new project in town, and that is that section of the Beltway. So the idea for the cars is to create a continuous hot lanes facility. I guess the entire Beltway in Virginia, the entire 95 corridor from somewhere 30 miles south of here to Washington, D.C., and 66 from Haymarket to Washington, D.C. Once again, all of those interstates will eventually become combination toll express lane facilities and regular lanes. So for us, our comprehensive plan calls for a trail, just like it does on 66, and well, actually just like it did on the original 495 hot lanes, and we were not able to get it 10 or 15 years ago on the original 495 hot lanes, but whereas it is included on the I-495 next and the I-66 trail, we immediately spoke up and said, well, guys, just like 66 and 495 next, there's a comp plan requirement for a trail, so that's already in play. Vdot has already reached out to us to talk about, terminuses and alignments, and so we're just beginning to have those discussions. I would expect the western limits would be the Springfield interchange, and so it would the south side of the Beltway. There's parks, ball fields just east of the Springfield interchange. On the north side, there's the Edsel Road, General Washington Industrial Park, Bryn Mawr neighborhood. So we're just starting to have discussions about, where would the terminuses be, what would be the alignment? Would it be north side, south side? Obviously,
there's also a railroad underpass.
Yeah, exactly, and that we just came. I just mentioned that when Nicole had mentioned that Heidi Mitter of Vdot had contacted her. The railroad underpass might be a way, for instance, if the Woodrow Wilson Bridge is on the north side. So if, for instance, it ran along the north side, but then we wanted it on the south side, that railroad underpass would be a conduit to make that type of connection. So this literally just became public knowledge maybe 3 weeks ago at this point, and so hot off the presses. Certainly don't have any answers yet, but that is something the committee should be aware of, because that's going to be the next big deal to ensure that we get a trail out of. I see hands. Imagine that piques an interest.
Can I jump in? I have a hand up, I think.
Yes, go ahead.
So on the north side, on the other side of Eisenhower, there's long been a plan for the trail. The Eisenhower Trail continues, goes up Holmes Run, but also in Alexandria has the trail extend across to Ben Brennan Park and goes over, and then they have on their maps the trail extension all the way to Fairfax County boundary. So it's about a few hundred yards north of the Beltway, but I'm just throwing that out there as that would be. There's no reason the trail actually has to physically be next to the Beltway, which is always, as long as it's parallel to the Beltway and goes exact same spots, I would be interested in seeing attention paid to that. It's got to be cheaper than putting in the $60 million.
Yeah, and when Nicole and I first brainstormed on that, we certainly saw the 4 Mile Run Trail, which everyone's familiar with, is paralleling that section for quite a bit. and it would be much more enjoyable than being along the Beltway. So it, again, as this plays out, it's quite possible that just like the 66 trail has what we call off-quarter pieces, that it makes more sense. The beauty of the off-quarter is that it is where people are. So you pick up population centers, you have visibility, so that, if it's isolated in the Beltway, no one can see it. You have to build wayfinding signs, so on and so forth. Conversely, the fact that the entire Beltway is bulldozed and rebuilt is an opportunity to pick up infrastructure that we would need. So, yes, thank you, James. That's and again, mentioning Alexandria, that from Van Dorn east on the north side of the Beltway is almost 100% Alexandria. So we're going to have to, partner with them.
Chris, it's Beth Inetta. Is it possible for you to expand the group to add to that conversation? So there are parks along the Beltway that do have comprehensive plan trails within them. And so any conversations about trails along the Beltway that might impact parks, we'd greatly want to take part in that. And then when it was kind of first announced, I did reach out to the various district members on this group if they wanted to kind of brainstorm on some alignment issues that go through their districts, but then also touch base in with land development because of the comprehensive plan changes and cases that have been coming in along Huntington and that sort of thing, where they're making various pedestrian connections to capitalize on the developer side of things. So if you guys would be willing to expand your group a little bit, I think there's a lot of input to put towards these facilities and take advantage of it early. I think would really benefit the conversation when you get to a later point, since it just started. So
yeah, that's a great point. Again, they're not even, it's Martha Coelho's group, our special projects group, that is again, this, how things go. All of a sudden people were invited to some pre-NEPA process.
Yeah, I was there.
Exactly, blah blah blah. And then I'm like, okay, well, we need a trail, by the way, people. And so yeah, absolutely, Beth, that's a good point.
Especially if they keep saying they're going to stay within the right of way, and I'm like, really, I'm not sure how that's going to happen since you have zero stormwater facilities, but it gets in the way of trails. So
yeah, absolutely. And like I said, I imagine the western terminus is some baseball field park at the very end of Frontier Drive next to the Beltway. So yes, that's a good point. We'll absolutely, again, there's just been some preliminary informal, again, Nicole and I have talked about it twice. Nicole and Heidi have talked about it once. I brought it up to Martha and the Thursday morning meeting group once, and that's been the extent of the discussions. But yes, thank you. We will definitely bring you and others on board.
I think Bob has his hand up.
Yeah. A couple quick things as the time is running out here, and I think we did not get the ideas for upcoming presentations. I also wanted to ask Howard, at last meeting, you spoke specifically about Route 50 planning and the $2.5 million fund that was released and how that was going to work and what that plan was. Did you get your answer from Chris, or did you want to go back to your thing from last month?
Say that, repeat. One moment. Let me
Yeah.
sure.
Last month you brought up that you heard, or it was announced that $2.5 million was released for the Route 50 corridor study, which includes trails, perhaps on both sides, from basically Fairfax City out to the Beltway, maybe beyond. And what was the status? So I put it on the agenda, and I just wondered if you wanted to address that specifically, because Chris explained about another study going up Gallows Road. And are they the same study or not the same study? So I just wanted to make sure you got your answer, Howard, from last month.
Well, it was, no, I didn't get the answer. It's the five projects east or west of Prosperity Avenue that there's a web page out that said they're going to be completed, or construction's going to start in the summer or fall of this year. And I wanted to know what what the status would be of those 5 projects.
So those are previously funded. It's essentially trying to create a complete connection from Prosperity, which already connects to Gallows, west to Pickett Lake. It's broken into individual projects, so there's like 5 or so projects along there. They're in different stages of evolution. Some of them are going to construction this year. The big floodplain creek by Nutley, I think, is lagging because of the complexity there. So I'm sorry, that's all I know off the top of my head. We can get a summary for you of where each and every one of those are.
Because I went on the website to look at the design reports, and they haven't been updated the last 2 months, so since January. So.
Well, yeah, there's the Transportation Design Division's report is the most accurate document for those statuses, and there is a lag between that. But I'm certainly not aware of any problems with any of those. But that's not a new study to your question, Bob. That's those are previously funded in the Transportation Priorities Plan as one of the last corridors that we're trying to build out our by corridors I mean United States primary routes that don't have infrastructure.
Okay, thanks, Chris.
And you mentioned presentations. David, didn't I was looking at the agenda real quick and I don't see it. Didn't someone ask to come present something next week, or did we ask, or next month that is, or did we ask for someone for next month, David? Who I'm drawing a blank. Who was
Said
that?
the West Falls Church Active Transportation Study.
Oh, yes. So that's actually something I'm involved with. I'm one of the technical staff involved in that, but that's a staff person named Tim Kutz, who is in our planning group. And yes, that would be timely to have at the committee. We've upzoned the West Falls Church Metro Station, or it's I don't know, comp plan, and it's about to be upzoned. But there'll be West Falls Church Metro Station will be converted to a transit-oriented development with high-rise density, all kind of good mixed use. It borders on the city of Falls Church, so the city of Falls Church's high school and the UVA site and everything is all intertwined. I think UVA, Virginia Tech, have sort of put a pause on their plans, but on the one side, the Metro site is going to be redeveloped, and on the other side, the Falls Church High School, middle school site is going to be redeveloped. And so an outgrowth of that is a neighborhood, an advisory group that is concerned about the lack of pedestrian bicycle infrastructure to get to that from the surrounding communities. And so thank you, Ken. That is what it was. And so we will have a presentation on that.
Okay, so for the agenda, Chris, the name of the presenter and about how long it will take, just for when I run up the next month's agenda to you guys.
Sure. Tim Kutz, Kutz, and I would say just like Lauren's tonight, maybe 30 to 45 minutes at the beginning of the meeting, Q&A.
Okay.
I'm double checking the spelling of his last name, but I think that's what. Yes, Tim Kutz Jr.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so let me ask if anybody has any other pressing issues for the committee.
I don't have a pressing issue, but I want to invite you all. We have that Greenway plan that we talked about a couple months ago. So next week on Saturday, we're having a cleanup and a walk along the 4.5 mile length of the Greenway, which is in Annandale. And so we're meeting in Columbia Pike, 7200 Columbia Pike. We'll have Congressman Byer and 3 council members there. Supervisors, sorry, wrong city. We'll have lots of things going on, but just everybody should know that's a locally sourced community project that we're working on to eventually connect the Cross County Trail all the way across to Green Spring Gardens. So 12 to 4 on Saturday, the 23rd.
Thank you for that. Anybody else? Well, then you guys know what time it is.
I'd like to
I
move
think
to
Jim should show
adjourn.
us what he's painting.
It's very relaxing to watch you paint.
It should be like for the whole meeting, and then we see what you do at the end of the meeting. It's like should be trail inspired.
He's muted.
He's muted.
Well, I'm not a big fan of this one. Yeah, I'll show you a different one. Nice small one here.
Oh, nice.
Oh, that is nice.
So the one I'm doing. Anyway, keeps me going.
It does keep us going.
Are they for
We
sale at
appreciate-
the event next week?
That
We
was
can have an art.
inappropriate. But sure, of course.
Okay, so moved, and I haven't heard a second yet for adjourn.
Second.
Okay. Meeting is ended, 8:59 p.m., and we will see all of you folks next month. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you. Take care.